Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and today I would like to talk to you about the science of Star Wars The Last Jedi. So, of course, this is a spoiler warning time. If you really don't want to find out anything about the movie, then you should probably turn off by now. Meanwhile, I am going to say I like the movie. I understand that a lot of people haven't liked the movie, but I think it is a fantastic movie, and I don't understand. I do understand that people sometimes get hurt because it is subverting their ideas, but the movie really went to great length to subvert many of the tropes of Star Wars, and I loved it when it did that. There are a few things that are out of character and a few things I would change, but all the same, I loved the movie. I'm really happy, and I think I was in the theater and people loved the whole thing. So let's talk about the things that have actual correspondence to real-world science. And the first thing is the scene where the Radius is attacked and the bridge is destroyed. Now you see an explosion and you see Leia and Akbar and everyone else on there sucked out into the harsh, unrelenting vacuum of space. Many people were posting, oh man, why didn't she explode instantly due to the pressure difference? Why was she able to use her force powers? Well, so in real life, the human body is actually relatively robust against vacuum. Your blood doesn't actually boil because there's enough pressure of the skin to make sure the vacuum or the boiling pressure is above, the temperature of your body. However, in the cases where this has happened in a controlled environment by accident, the two test subjects passed out around 15 seconds after being exposed to a vacuum. Both of them reported that the saliva on their tongues and everything was boiling. So you lose liquid, it boils from exposed things like mucous membranes in the eyes and things like that. But you wouldn't explode unless you were stupid enough to try holding your breath. Now, obviously, obviously you want to conserve the amount of oxygen getting to the brain, but trying to hold a lungful of oxygen inside your body means that you're holding 15 pounds per square inch or 10 tons per square meter of surface area, and that would want to expand. And I would rather have it expand out through my mouth rather than out through my chest. So yeah, you can't hold your breath to stay alive and stay conscious longer in space. After about 15 seconds, the oxygen in your blood starts being depleted and you very quickly will pass out. Leia, of course, has had some limited force training and has some powers. After all, she is a descendant of one of the most powerful force users in the galaxy. So while I can say this is the first time we've seen this happening, and many people said, oh, it's like flying around like Mary Poppins, whatever, I actually really liked that. Obviously we knew that Carrie Fisher had died, and many people thought, oh, this is it, this is how she's going to be written out of the movie, but boy, there was a serious cheer. There was a lot of love for that scene in the theater, and I agree with it. So yeah, I mean, she comes back and whatever, and it's not unrealistic, given that we've seen people walking around on asteroids wearing nothing more than a gas mask. This is a galaxy far, far away, and technology frequently doesn't behave the way we expect. So next, actually let's talk about technology that doesn't behave quite as we would expect in the real world. Obviously, the movie spends a lot of time in this pursuit between the Supremacy and the Resistance fleet. Star Wars spaceships don't move like real spaceships, and real spaceships would accelerate continuously. In Star Wars, they tend to move like ships on an ocean and aircraft in an atmosphere. So they tend to reach top speed and then top out at whatever speed that is. And that speed seems to be comparable to high-speed fighter planes. So yeah, watching the ships get shot down or run out of fuel and then drop back, that would actually happen regardless of whether you were accelerating continuously or not. But you can't really make any argument one way or another as to whether that would work. You can point out that on board the Supremacy, you see this tactical map showing the distance to the Radius and the various ships getting failing and getting pulled into range, and you actually see a silhouette of the Radius, so you can actually estimate the distance between the Radius and the pursuing ships. And that, of course, then lets you figure out the speed they're moving at, and you can take a look and see how far away the planet is and realize it would actually take them months to reach that planet traveling at those speeds. I'm sure, someone can actually do the math on that once we get a DVD release. Oh wait, DVD, Blu-ray, or a rental, or whatever they do these days. You kids with your streaming and all that. So, of course, the next part, the sacrifice of the Radius. Now, people said, can you figure out the energy of that thing? Because I'm going to say one of the most spectacular scenes in the whole of Star Wars. Like, boy, that was... I was like, in Rogue One where they shoot Jedi with the single cell ignition and Krennic's looking down and he says, "It's beautiful." I was like, that was me. I was like, oh my god, that is beautiful. So the energy of an object traveling at light speed, if it has mass, is infinite. That's why only massless objects can move at the speed of light. There's a factor called gamma that comes in from special relativity, and it involves a square root. And when your velocity goes faster than the speed of light, it's a square root of a negative number. It becomes an imaginary number. And I don't mean an imaginary number like the number of midichlorians in Luke Skywalker's blood. No, I mean a square root of a negative number, right? So going exactly at the speed of light gives a gamma factor which is infinite. So you would have infinite energy. But if you remember in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker calls the Millennium Falcon a piece of junk, and Han confidently points out that it'll make 0.5 past light speed. I've no idea what that means, but it does imply that hyperspace is faster than the speed of light. So yeah, the energy would become imaginary, right? This is the realm of something that is postulated in physics called tachyons, but you can't really apply real-world physics to Star Wars physics and get any real correspondence. Of course, as beautiful as that scene was, I have to kind of switch away from real physics into universe physics to answer a particular criticism. A lot of fanboys are saying, well, if they were able to take out the supremacy by ramming it with a hyperspace-capable spacecraft, surely such a dangerous threat to the galaxy would have been taken down by this process prior to this moment. And there's a lot of vague arguments as to why this wouldn't happen, because, the rebels were really lacking the ships to do this or whatever. And then you've got to ask, well, why don't the Imperials do that to the rebels instead of losing their dreadnoughts and whatever? Why, if hyperspace ramming is a thing, why don't we see more of it in the Star Wars universe? It would have really helped them out at the Battle of Endor, right? My response, if you want to keep the Star Wars universe consistent and not have every single battle devolve to ramming at hyperdrive speed, I would say that fancy tracking doohickey that they were using on the Supremacy to keep track of the Radius, let's just say that was something that was not normally used, because doing it required synchronizing it to the energy fields of the target ship, and by so doing they opened a navigational conduit that could be exploited by the Radius to ram the target, right? So you don't track ships through hyperspace because it ruins the story, except when you do because it lets you ram them. So that's my argument. Don't track things through hyperspace because it lets people ram you at hyperspace, right? Moving on, the planet Crate. The planet Crate's actually kind of cool. Now, obviously it was designed by some production designer that wanted this beautiful white surface with this deep red stuff underneath, and it looked great in the abortive this last stand against the walkers. Obviously that was an interesting parallel, because it really accomplished nothing from the rebel point of view. It never even bought them any time, but it did look amazing. But the surface layer with the red thing below was really important when Luke came out, because it became like one of the clues to the audience that he is just a projection. That, and the fact that he's using a blue lightsaber rather than his green lightsaber, right? So, does a thing like that exist in the real world? Yes, they do. There are salt flats like that are essentially dried out seas. They are basins in mountains where during the wet season, water flows down and it forms a flat lake, and then during the dry season, the water evaporates and leaves a layer of salt behind. They actually filmed this, I believe, in a salt flat in Bolivia. And it's interesting because these salt flats in South America are one of the main sources in the world of lithium, which goes into lithium-ion batteries. They're also, they exist, and they have, native life and things like that, but they don't have this, different color between the top layer and the layer underneath. You do occasionally see this in the real world where you'll have a layer of salt and then dark dirt underneath. This happens because the dirt can wick up moisture, and the moisture can carry salts, and then when it reaches the surface it evaporates. So you'll see places in the world where this sort of happens. But the deep red crystals on Crate, what could those be? Well, my bet is zirconia. So zirconia is a crystal, it's zirconium silicon tetroxide, right? I think that's what it is. And it's actually, when it's in its pure form, it is a transparent clear crystal like a diamond. However, because of the place it forms, it typically will incorporate other elements such as uranium and thorium, and the radiation coming out of these changes the crystal structure. And when you change the crystal structure, you're actually putting ionizing radiation into it, and it stresses the structure, and it can make it, in the case of zirconia, it can become blood red. Now, clearly Crate is this taken to Star Wars level, make it bigger and badder and more awesome. We have these giant inclusions, giant crystals under the surface. In real life, there's a lot more range of colors, but yeah, that would be one possibility. Zirconia is also interesting because it gets included into other rocks. It's a very hard mineral and it incorporates radioactive elements. So it's very useful to geologists for performing radioisotope dating because you can look at the ratios of uranium to thorium to lead and figure out the decay cycles. So yeah, Planet Crate looks awesome. Not sure, of course, it could exist in its form in reality, but it was one of the great visual moments in that whole movie. So I think I've covered the big science from the movie. I enjoyed it. You don't need to agree with me, but I'm going to go and watch it again. I'm Scott Manley. May the Force be with you. Fly safe.